It's pretty obvious that the president's offer of a national dialogue is not going to sway protesters.
No, of course, they've been out on the streets again overnight, and to the protesters, these moves towards national dialogue and, not running again, all this sounds like a desperate plea from the regime. Give us a bit more time and we'll find a solution that sort of satisfies some of your demands. But of course, the demonstrators know that the regime wants to keep this current system in place, even if it's prepared to let go of Bouteflika at some point. And there's a lot of frustration about the whole system, not just about the fact that Bouteflika is running again. Also, note that this idea of a national dialogue is not new. It was floated already a few months ago by the government. It talked of constitutional reforms, the creation of a post of vice president, and other related things. But clearly, that idea did not win over the people who are out on the streets now. They're saying it's essentially absurd to hold an election on April the 18th if you're already admitting that Bouteflika would step down within a year anyway. Meanwhile, others are saying, well, how can we trust them? What if he actually doesn't step down within a year? Then what happens?
Right. We can clearly see that the regime is at a loss right now. And it looks like they don't really have a plan B. And at the same time, the opposition is very scattered. So what lies ahead for Algerians?
Yeah, it's true that people in the streets haven't rallied around a particular figure. They don't seem to want a figurehead. And in that sense, I suppose you could draw a parallel with the events in Tunisia and Egypt at the beginning of the Arab Spring. There was definitely a feeling of we don't want a leader. But there are many differences also between Algeria and Tunisia and Egypt. It's also true that at the political level, so if not talking about the street now, but the opposition political parties failed last month to agree on a joint candidate to face Bouteflika on April the 18th. Going back to the protests for a second, I mean, it might seem strange from our vantage point here in Paris to look at these protests and say, well, why is it that people are just saying what we don't want? Why are they not saying who they do want? But I think we can't underestimate the very powerful emotion of humiliation, because after all, this is a president who has not spoken a word in public for 6 years. He's clearly not in control of his faculties, let alone in control of Algeria. And there's a common feeling among the people in the street there, why should we accept this? Voters in America or France take it for granted that they would not be saddled with this kind of leader for years and years. So why should we accept that? So there's a very strong emotional element in all of this, I think, as well.